So I'm trying to do this all in one take because I want this to be like a realistic podcast, but let's give it a go. My name is Cesar Valencia. I'm 21 years old. I am a student currently online, fully online. It's called the U of H Extend program at the University of Houston, and I work full time currently as a financial reporting analyst one at an oil and gas company. It's a Japanese oil and gas company in the Galleria area, uptown Houston. Um, I'm mainly starting this podcast because I just want to. Honestly, I work a bunch, and so I really just want something to like do whenever I'm free to kind of take my mind off of work. That's still productive in a way, and a means for me to get out my thoughts and to talk. And I want to start interviewing people and kind of getting their perspective on things, on life, finances, career, lifestyle, um, relationships, and yeah. So I'm going to start by giving you guys a little backstory of me and where I come from, how I get where I am, kind of so you guys can see why I think the way that I think, why I am the way that I am. So, right out of high school, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. Even like my senior year, I remember even junior year, whenever we started applying for colleges, I knew I wanted to do business. I knew I wanted to work for myself at some point eventually, but I wasn't sure what that was. So I applied to the University of Arkansas. I applied to Texas State University. I applied to Texas Tech University, and I applied to Oklahoma State University, to all of the business schools. And I got accepted to all those schools, but whenever I started seeing like how much they cost, I was like, okay, wow. But University of Arkansas had like a tuition, like it was like 90% tuition, out of state tuition. Sorry, it was waived if you got like a certain GPA. So I thought that would help a bunch. So I enrolled at the University of Arkansas, or I committed. I accepted the acceptance letter. I accepted their acceptance for my acceptance, something like that. And I put down like the deposit for the dorm. I started like looking at all like the class plans and stuff, the degree plans. I was pretty much 100% ready to go to the University of Arkansas. And then halfway through my senior year, I got like they send you like a bill, like an estimate on like how much they think it's going to cost. And it was insane. I can't remember the exact figure, but I remember the Texas State one, which was like I ended up going to Texas State like 2 weeks later to see if it would be any cheaper. Sorry, excuse me. If it would be any cheaper, and that was going to be like my backup option, and it was ludicrous. It was like, I think it was like $13,000, maybe $11,000, and I was like, for a small state school, like that's insane. My mom, like my parents, when I was in high school, a little bit of a backstory. We'll throw back here so you guys can understand this too. Up until I was in third grade, I had a single mom, and we were pretty poor. And then she met my stepdad, and she started working a better job. My mom kind of has a little bit of the same story I do. I'm kind of getting there. Of like, she didn't graduate. My mom didn't even graduate high school, and she worked her way up from the ground floor at an oil and gas company, and ended up making over six figures at one point. And so eventually we started doing pretty well for ourselves, and we moved into the suburbs and out of like the inner city. Started going to a nice school, and things were great, blah blah blah, whatever you want to call it, the white picket fence life. And then whenever she met my stepdad, they ended up divorcing whenever I was a freshman in high school. And so whenever I was a freshman in high school, we were not very financially stable at all. Like, we didn't even know how we were going to pay the next month's rent. And so, but my mom has always been a hustler. My mom, that's kind of where I get that from. She always was going to make it work. So I was never worried in that aspect. But I definitely didn't want to put her in a situation that she didn't have to already be in, as in paying for a super fucking expensive college experience for me to just go get drunk all the time. I feel like is the main reason I feel like a lot of people go to college. Don't get me wrong, this is a personal opinion, but I think there's a lot of reasons to go to college. I think that like independence, it teaches you independence, it teaches you a lot of things, but if you're not in the financial position for your parents to be able to afford college, I don't think that that's a big enough reason for you to put your parents or yourself, it's going to be yourself in the future, in debt just to go experience that, unless you're wanting to do something to genuinely help society further. Something like going being a lawyer, being a doctor. I'm not saying those are the only important things. Everyone has their own passion, but I just personally wouldn't feel comfortable putting my mom in a strenuous financial position just for me to go and follow my passion. I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about my love for my family, and that kind of shows my love for my family. I feel like not wanting to put them in a strenuous position that they don't have to be in. So I figured, well, let me look at alternative routes. Let me look at alternative scenarios. And so I started looking into community college. And as I was looking into community college, my uncle was trying to convince my cousin to quit his current job and go work for him, because he felt like at a smaller company that had just been founded, he had more of an opportunity and more of a ceiling, a higher ceiling, than at a corporation that he was at just being a numbered employee. And so I remember vividly them sitting in the living room and my uncle trying to convince my cousin to leave, and my cousin at first just like wasn't going for it. And I remember thinking, like, this sounds awesome, like I want to do this. Sounds great, like I can make some money, go to community college at the same time. And so I remember asking my uncle, hey, is there any positions open in y'all's shop, at y'all's company? And he got back to me and said that there wasn't any positions like the one that he was talking to my cousin about, which made a significant amount more. It was like, I think it was like $6 more, but that there was a helper position, and that if I was good enough, there was obviously a high ceiling at this company, so there would be some potential. And so immediately whenever I heard that, I'm the type of person who I'm going to work day and night for anything that I want and care about. Like, I'm going to make sure that I put in the amount of effort. I'm not just going to be like, I'm going to get what I want. No, I'm going to put in the hours, and I'm going to put in the effort to make sure that I get what I want. And so when I heard that, I remember I would joke around with the guys in the warehouse. They're some of my best friends now, but they would always make fun of me and say, like, because you know how it is working in a shop. I don't know if you know how it is actually, but working in a shop or a warehouse or something like that, a machine shop, there's a lot of rapport, there's a lot of banter, there's a lot of like making fun of each other. And so they would be like, oh, you're going to be an accountant, right? Because at this point I had decided I was going to do 1 year of community college, and I was going to major in accounting eventually, but I wasn't 100% sure I was going to stay at this company, or I was going to even stay in Houston. At this point, I was even considering maybe going to university after, maybe trying to get scholarships, who knows. But I knew I wanted to do accounting, and they would say, like, oh, if you're going to do accounting, you shouldn't be working in the shop, in the warehouse. But I knew deep down, like, I'm going to one day eventually get there. Like, no matter how hard I have to work, no matter what I have to do, I'm going to get there. And so, rewind back. I'm kind of bad at storytelling, guys, so this first episode is going to be a little bit rough just because, like, I'm not the best at storytelling. But hopefully whenever we get to interviews, it'll be a little bit better. The solo episodes might be a little bit rough, though, because I kind of tend to ramble. I have ADHD, if you can't tell. And so I decided to stay in Houston and help my mom out because she wasn't in the best financial situation. I didn't want to put her, one, in a worse situation, and two, I wanted to help contribute to get her out of the situation she was in. And so I decided to stay in Houston and do community college and work at this company. And so I'm doing this. Literally not even a month later, I am working my tail off, like working probably like 70 hours a week at this company. And I'm going to school full time. I think I was doing in-person class. I think I was doing like mostly online, but a few in-person classes at this point. And so I was actually like physically going there. I was so tired. And they asked me if I was interested in working in logistics, like shipping and receiving, as the head of shipping and receiving, coordinating every pallet coming in and out, every shipment coming in and out, inventory, all of that, this, that, and the other. And for me, it was just $2 more on my paycheck and another notch on my LinkedIn belt. So I was like, hell yeah, obviously I'm super interested in doing this. So I start doing that, and this is whenever I really start to build my LinkedIn. I start to try and build my network. I start every single place I go. Add me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. What do you do for a living? How did you get that nice car? How did you get that nice suit? This, that, and the other. And eventually, after I think 3 months, they had asked me if I was interested in working in accounting as a junior accountant under a CPA who was the previous controller of an older company that was founded by the same owners that was very successful. And he was 87 years old at the time, so he was going to retire soon. So they were basically trying to transfer over knowledge, and they were like, hey, we have this young gun who's a hustler, learns stuff, he picks stuff up very quickly. Let's see if he's interested in it. And they knew I was getting my degree in accounting. But at this point, I hadn't even taken accounting classes at this point. So this is all like completely new to me. But this is a manufacturing company, so this is more of operational accounting. This is more of like paying invoices. This is not as much of actual deep accounting knowledge. So I do that. I start doing more of what's like a glorified project manager job, and doing their bill of materials, their work orders, kind of tying their whole ERP system together. As a 19-year-old kid, I didn't even really know what I was doing, but I worked hard at it, and anything you put in front of me, I was going to get it done by hook or by crook. So I did that for a while, and I was happy until I started to feel like I was in a bubble that I couldn't get out of, and I started to feel like, okay, well, I'm getting my degree in accounting, but I feel like I'm starting to do more of like operational supply chain management almost, in a way. And so I started looking for new jobs. This is like 2 years. I eventually, after a year and a half of doing this, I transferred to U of H. So I stayed a little bit longer than I was hoping at community college, but it was so cheap. And I honestly should have stayed the full 2 years at the community college, but I kind of wanted to transfer earlier. I was kind of a little bit insecure about like, oh, I go to a community college I wanted to tell people I was going to the university already. Probably not the best decision, but I did it anyways, and so I transferred over to university. And so at this point, I'm a student at the university, fully online in their online program. I'm still working full time, but I'm looking for different companies. And at this point, I start looking at internships and seeing if maybe an internship would be the best route for me at this point, because I'm so young and I'm still in college, and I'm wanting to work at a big corporate company one day. I don't know if I want to work at a big corporate company. I just know I want to make a lot of money, right? So I'm thinking, what's a lot of money? A big company. So I am eventually working towards trying to get my degree and then trying to find an internship. And so I start looking on LinkedIn, and I find a few actually like really good full-time offers, but I wasn't even sure if I could get them because a lot of them required a degree. But there was one that was an accounting and finance assistant for a Japanese conglomerate. I didn't know this at the time. They're a top 5 Japanese trading house. Warren Buffett actually has interest in them. And I started work. I'm probably going to edit that out just because I don't want you guys to know exactly what company I worked for. But I didn't know if I could get the job. There was an accounting and finance assistant position open at this company, and the degree was preferred, I think. Preferred was the word that was used. And so, but I am relatively good at interviewing, and I am a hard worker, and so I will work however many hours to get this job done. I will be the best possible person for this job. I promise you I am the best candidate for this job. And obviously I was nervous. I didn't say it exactly like that. I'm not just like the most chill guy ever and had no fears. I was definitely super, super, super nervous. And I had like 10 interviews at this company. Because originally it was an AP assistant that the job was for. And that's what all my experience was. And I told you guys it was paying invoices in AP. It was more operational. And so I figured this is exactly what my experience is for. There'd be a higher likelihood of me getting a job like this with no degree. But eventually, after like 2 interviews, I had asked them, hey, and this is the power of open mouths don't get fed, hey, I see this accounting and finance position open. I'm not sure 100% what I want to do yet. I don't want to lock myself in this bubble of just AP. That's kind of why I was getting frustrated at my old company. Is there a possible way that somebody could move laterally from the AP assistant position to the accounting and finance position? and they were like, absolutely, we may even just interview for this now. Let me talk to management and get back to you. And so they came back to me and basically restarted my whole hiring and interviewing process for the new position. And this new position for me was more ideal just because it was more flexible, and I was going to be the corporate controller's direct right-hand man and assistant. And I wasn't on a team, but it was more of like I was going to get to bounce around, and I was kind of a five-tool player and got to see things from different perspectives, see things from the finance perspective, see things from treasury, see things from FP&A, financial reporting, ops accounting, revenue accounting, expenditures, and kind of see the whole realm of things and how things work. And so eventually I get offered this job on my birthday, and I'm super excited. Everything's awesome. I'm very nervous though, obviously. I'm a young kid. I was 19 years old at the time, just turned 20. I got offered 2 days before my actual birthday. And so I was turning 20. Super young kid, didn't know 100% what I even wanted to do with my life. I just knew I just gotten a really good job at a great company. And so I'm very proud of myself at this point, but I'm still kind of feeling imposter syndrome very heavily and kind of feeling like, do I really deserve to be here? Did I kind of just luck out? Am I here just because of my uncle? Which I don't really. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but I genuinely believe, which it showed further along the story, you'll see that either way, whether or not my uncle worked at that company, I was going to find my way to what I wanted to do. Whether or not it would have happened that fast, probably not. But I'm the type of person who wholeheartedly believes, and I will not budge on that because I have self-belief in myself. And that's something that I struggled with for a really long time, was having that and genuinely having that, and not a cockiness that comes from insecurity and a lack of love for thyself. So I can genuinely say that I know that I either way would have been successful. Maybe it was expedited the time period. Who knows? Probably so. But I do think that either way I would have done that. And so I'll continue back to the story. So I start doing the accounting and finance position, and I'm working 45 hours a week at this point and going to school full time, taking 4 classes at the same time online in the evenings, and I'm loving it. I'm not really having an involved role, but it's kind of just like, it was a great introduction to corporate lifestyle and corporate oil and gas lifestyle, just so many different things. Working at an actual big company, how to work with people, how to work on an actual team. I didn't even know how to really use like Microsoft Teams or Outlook before that. I knew how to use Outlook, but Microsoft Teams was like a foreign concept to me, and at corporate companies, that's all you use. And so just small things like that were just new to me, and things that I had to work on and learn, and they were super interesting to me, and they were super new to me, and I really liked them at first, and I really liked getting to know them. And so, sorry guys, I'm getting scatterbrained because I've been talking for 20 minutes straight. So I wasn't really as involved at first, but slowly I started to get more and more involved. I started to ask for more. I started to work more hours. I started to show them, hey, I started to actually get involved in the implementation project, their ERP implementation project, which was kind of perfect for me. That was one of the reasons I sold them in my interview, was I did this whole company's ERP implementation pretty much by myself as a 19-year-old kid. I can be a big asset to y'all's ERP implementation. So I started working directly on their ERP implementation project, and so I started ramping up in hours, ramping up in responsibility, showing them, hey, I will get this done by any means possible. You can trust me. And so whenever they were reformatting their accounting department, it happened to be 9 months after I started there. They offered me a financial reporting analyst role and a promotion, and it was a more of a defined role. I was actually on a team, and not only a team, but the financial reporting team, which is a significant team. And so I was very, very happy. I was very ecstatic, and this is just 2.5 years after I graduated high school and started community college literally 2.5 years ago, and wasn't even sure what I wanted to do with my life. And so at this point, I'm feeling the imposter syndrome heavy. At this point, the imposter syndrome is sinking in, and I'm like, am I supposed to be here, or did I just get lucky? Like, it wasn't just right place or right time, or did I genuinely work my tail off to get here? And so that was something that I struggled with for a long time. I struggled with it literally up until a few months, like 2 months ago, a month ago, if you want to call it. And it took me putting myself in situations where I was going and traveling across the country by myself. I traveled across the globe by myself. I went to Europe for 2.5 weeks completely by myself. Traveled across the country of Europe completely by myself, and just spent time with myself, and really had to get uncomfortable and look at the ugly and say, no, I don't like this about you, and no, you should like this about yourself. And it really, really, really was hard when I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, like, you're not the best person sometimes, and you don't do the best things sometimes. And for a while there, I was really self-critical, and I was like, you're a bad person. And it took me a while to realize, like, no, you just do some bad things sometimes. As humans do, we all mess up, we're all human. And it's about forgiving yourself. And if you can never forgive yourself, then you're never going to truly love yourself, and you're never going to truly have that self-confidence, because that's where that comes from. And so I wanted to tell that story so you guys know a little bit about me and where I come from and what I've been doing for the last 4 years. There's definitely a lot more to it. You guys will obviously see over time. You guys will get to know a lot more stories over time. I don't want to tell you guys everything about me in the first episode. Then I would just write a movie. But I wrote down some notes. I have my journal from my travels. I went to Banff, Canada, as you can see. I think my profile picture is me in Banff. And then I went to Venice. I went to the Dolomites, the mountains of Italy, the Italian Alps. I went to Venice, or I already said Venice. I went to Rome. Rome was awesome. Rome was way better than Venice, in my opinion. And yeah, that was a span of 2 months when I was getting out of a really, really, really bad point in my life where I had ended a 2.5-year relationship, 2-year relationship, and we were living together. It feels, when I say it, they're like, oh, you're young, 2 years is not that much time, 2.5 years is not that much time, but we moved in together literally like a month after we met. Took her to Mexico a month after we met. We were together every single minute of every single day. And so that was my other half. And so losing someone like that it's like you're coping with the loss of the relationship while at the same time you're coping with the loss of a part of yourself and a part of who you were in a chapter of your life. It's like you're closing a chapter, and that's really, really, really hard and scary and dark sometimes. Moving into my own apartment, I never lived by myself. I met her whenever I was 19 years old, and so I never lived by myself. I always had her. She always figured out the logistics of the apartment. I would just be super planning when it came to actually going to tour the apartments and moving everything and all that stuff, but she handled the electricity and the water and the Wi-Fi and setting up all that stuff. And so it was like closing one chapter and starting another, and it was a really scary time in my life. And I came up with a lot of good stuff. I had a lot of good thoughts. I had a lot of bad thoughts. I had a lot of ugly thoughts. I realized, hey, you got to be easy on yourself sometimes. Life is hard. We all go through things, and you're probably going to go through this 5 more times, 10 more times. And that's the beauty of life, is to keep going through it and to keep saying, no, I know I can get through this. And I feel like that's where confidence comes from as well. And I feel like that's where you get a scary confidence. There's something scary about, I've heard this before on a Chris Williamson podcast. There's something scary about someone who's been broken and has came back. There's something scary about someone who's lost everything and has came back. Or I think Joe Rogan said this, actually. I'm sorry. I love Chris Williamson as well. But there's something scary about that. Like, there's no fear because you know you can get it back. Whether or not tomorrow I end up homeless, or tomorrow I end up losing the love of my life, or God forbid I lose one of my children, it's going to be the worst thing to ever happen to me at the moment. The worst thing to ever happen to you is the worst thing to ever happen to you. But there's a scary confidence about the fact that you know you'll get through that. And I'm going to stop rambling for now. I'm going to read off just the 3 things that I took away from reading my journals, and just 3 things that I just kind of wanted to talk about. The first thing I wrote is self-confidence. and where it comes from and how it affects you. So self-confidence, I believe, doesn't come from, oh, I have this flashy car, I have these nice clothes, I have this nice apartment, I have this, that, and the other. I think it comes from the work that you put in to get all those things. And hear me out here. I think that when you get something like that and you work extremely, genuinely hard for it, no one can take that away from you. You are confident in the fact that you worked to get that. You had to do something to get that, and you respect and you love that about yourself. And there's some type of quality about yourself that got you to that point and put you in that position to where you were able to get that thing. And so I feel like that's where a lot of the time, a lot of overprivileged people struggle with that, and that imposter syndrome and that self-love and that self-confidence of like, and that's why I feel like where arrogance comes from a lot of the time, and that false confidence is you didn't work to get that thing, and so you're feeling like, do I even deserve this thing? And I think that's a really hard thing to live with. I think that's a really hard thing to live with, to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, do I deserve where I'm at? Am I supposed to be where I'm at? I think that's one of the hardest things anyone can ever look at themselves and think. And so I think that self-confidence comes from knowing I'm a badass and I'm capable of doing this thing 10 times over. And I think once you do that, then you have a respect for yourself, and you do things enough time, and you shock yourself enough time, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't even think I could do that. I surprised myself there. You start to be impressed with yourself, and you start to love yourself and have a genuine, true confidence that's not like an arrogance, and it's not a false confidence. You're not just like, oh, I'm the best, and I can't tell you why. It's a true, genuine love for yourself and a respect for the self that you've built. And so I think that is super, super important to the art of perfectionism, the beauty and the ugly. Matthew McConaughey, I love Matthew McConaughey. I heard him talk about this on the Jay Shetty podcast recently. I love Jay Shetty as well. Let me mute my phone. And he was talking about how he's a perfectionist, and I'm the exact same. Everything he said resonated exactly. It hit a spot. I chase perfection so much, and I don't want to stop chasing perfection because it has allowed me to get where I am. And chasing perfection gives me that self-confidence because I'm able to say I will stop at nothing to get something done. Chasing perfection is something that I think we all need to do a little bit more of. I think that we all need to try to attain perfection, but then on the other hand realize that it's not attainable. And when it's not attainable and things come in realistically and they're not perfect, saying, okay, well, things aren't perfect, but I did everything I could possibly do to make sure that I'm successful. And I think that there's a happiness that you can, a peacefulness that you can have in that, and saying I did absolutely everything I can. And I think it's important that more of us chase perfection, because I'm a big advocator for why be average when we only have one life. Like, I know this is also a personality thing, but I just am not okay with just sitting there and just living the same life day to day. And if you're okay with that, then that's great. But if you're feeling like there's something off in your life and you're not happy with yourself and you're complaining and you're making no changes actively to better your life, then you can't say that. And I think that we should do, in that aspect, we should do a little bit more of chasing perfection and a little bit less complaining. And I think that we would be a lot happier with ourselves and with life in general. And so I think that chasing perfection is a really, really tricky topic, because you don't want to get to the point where you're a perfectionist and you're too cynical and you start to get negative. You start to get really, really negative whenever you're a perfectionist, and you start to only see the bad in things. But instead being like, okay, well, how can I fix this? And being an optimist perfectionist and being like, okay, I want to chase perfection, but when perfection doesn't come, what adjustments can I make to get perfection next time? but also being okay with the fact that you're never going to reach perfection. It's like a double-edged sword. And so that's something that I struggle with a lot. Number 3 is having some sort of moral compass and ethical standards. I think that that is super, super, super important. I think that that's something that I've struggled with for a long time to see, especially in our generation, in our society nowadays. It's kind of like if you get ahead by hook or by crook. If it's kind of like if you're a sucker, if you play by the rules and you play fair and you don't try and get over on the next guy to get ahead, then what are you doing? Then you didn't really play the game, did you? If you played fair, then you didn't really play. You didn't try. You didn't try hard enough. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. I feel like is a lot of the time what we think. And like I said, you want to chase perfectionism, and you want to genuinely strive for more and try to be great, but also you need to have a moral compass and say, well, I'm not going to screw anybody over to get there. And so I think that that's something that's very, very important. I think that's something that we're lacking and we're missing now a lot of the days, especially as young men. And that's one of my biggest reasons for having this podcast and trying to start talking and saying my thoughts on things is to share with people and to tell people it's okay if you're feeling like, well, no, that's wrong. Like, that's a bad thing to do. You shouldn't do that. I shouldn't have to do that to get ahead. And to kind of give people a safe space and to tell people it's okay to have different thoughts and it's okay to have different perspectives on things, and life is hard and sometimes you're not always going to feel 100%. It's not always going to be like Matthew McConaughey says, you're not always going to get that 100 in so many different meanings. You're not always going to be happy. You're not always going to be financially stable. You're not always going to be super fit. But being okay with that, but at the same time making the adjustments to actively every day try and attain a higher level than you're currently at. So I think that that's something that's super, super important, and I think that that's something that we should all strive for more of. And yeah, I think that this is definitely something that I'm going to do more of. I want to definitely have some more solo episodes where I just kind of sit down and journal with you guys and talk. But I definitely want to interview people that are not necessarily always in positions of power, positions of success, but people from different points of perspectives and people from different views of life, and just people from all around, people who have gotten rich at 5 because their parents were rich, and people who have gotten rich at 50 and have been rich 10 different times, and people who have gotten rich in the oil industry, people who have gotten rich in the stock market, people who are professional athletes, people who are actors. I really want to have Matthew McConaughey on. That is my goal. That is my ultimate goal for this podcast. Joking, obviously. My goal is to reach out to people and to reach further my horizon and to connect with people and to tell people you guys are not alone. I've felt the same thing a million times. I'm going to feel the same thing a million more times, and it's okay. And so, yeah, this was a great first episode. I'm going to wrap it up here so I don't ramble for an outro. But good night, guys.